Welcome to part 6 in the series of videos on building a gauge 1 carriage. I've concentrated now on the bogies. We've made the main component parts and I've spent some time really just concentrating on the prototype of this bogie. So what we've done is, say, I've just built one at the moment, and this is really just to test the theory, if you like, to make sure I've got everything right. Before I go off and cut all the parts and cut all the pieces for everything, I've just concentrated on making one for the moment, just to see that, as I say, I've got most of the idea right. And as you can see there now, we've got our suspension, which is what I wanted to build in. I mentioned before, with suspension it will ride the tracks much better, run over points and things. So it's pretty much gone to the drawing as I would hoped. The only slight change I've made is on here, these mountings for the spring here. I did originally think of having something mounted on the side, but once I started to put it together, you can say, oh, this is now going to be better having these mounted on here. So we've got our little pieces of angle on here. We've got the axle to support. We've got a rod here to support the trailing arms. And so we've now got our suspension like so. So fairly happy with that now. That's more or less what I wanted, and that's basically verified that I've got most things right from the original drawings in terms of how I was thinking. So I've spent, let's say, the last few days or so making essentially the component parts. I wanted to make sure this was right, as I said before I start going off and cutting all the parts. I've made a whole bunch of parts now for the other bogies, and this is what I'll be concentrating on. For example, these are the, if you like, the stops for the suspension. So as I mentioned before, if we lift this up without any of these stops in position, the wheels will just droop down, and they will just droop down horribly. So these are the stops, very simple, just like a Z shape, made of two pieces of angle, then riveted together, and I've already pre-drilled those. The other things I've since bought are these. These are white metal castings, and these are for the side of the carriage, just to make it look right. Now these will fit on the side like so. And one thing I did discover, and it's been a very useful learning curve, is these white metal castings, the metal is very, very soft. You've only got to look at it sideways and it's quite easily bent. So I had to treat these very, very carefully. And one I did discover on the assembly is it's far easier, and which is what I'll do for the remaining bogies, is drill these first and get these screwed onto here, get all this set up before I actually assemble them. As what I did find working the other way, when I assembled it, then trying to fit these on, you have to strip everything down and spot everything through, so it's going to be much easier. Now I know I've got an idea of the order of how to assemble these. And this is what it looks like, the completed one. So it just gives the effect, and that drops over here, just drops over the top, and that's screwed on there. Bogie now assembled with the white metal castings, just to complete what it looks like now, just to finish it off. And so this will be ready for painting. What I'll obviously have to do is take it all apart again. So as I mentioned before, it's only got some temporary screws in here that will need to be shortened. And just for completion now, we can get the effect of it running on the track there. I just thought I'd show you the build sequence. So we've drilled these holes in that plate ready. Before we rivet this angle onto this top plate, the other thing I just need to do also is mark the position where the support for the trailing arms will be, and we've got the dimensions off the first prototype one I did, so we can easily just mark where they're going to go and do that on both of them. Okay, before we fix these angles onto here, so we've drilled the holes in this plate now. So before we actually rivet it onto here, I can mark the position where the axles for the trailing arms are going to go. We've measured it off the existing prototype that I made, so we can put those, measure where those are going to go on here. Use a height gauge on that. All you need to do now is just centre pop the positions where the axles for the trailing arm are going to go. There's a slight centre pop on there. Let's get that started. Okay, that's one done. Okay, let's just get our centre drill, take this drill out. And what I've found is, as I'm using the same couple of drills and bits and pieces each time, I just keep them all in a little jar so it's just easy to grab them. There's the next one I want. So we've got our centre drill in the jar that we need. Pop that in there, into the chuck. And I'll just give that a little bit of height so I don't drill into my drill vise. Raise that up a little tad. A bit of packing underneath. Move that out of there. I'm just spotting the hole where the trailing arm axle is going to be. This works a lot better, just spotting the hole, so there's less risk of the drill wandering off, which can easily happen. Let's drill this one through here now. Okay, we've just put the angle on this side plate here, ready for drilling. I've just clamped it on there. This is just a spot through from this top plate just through to this piece of angle. We can just pop that on there, just a spot through. If I work out the way to hold it. Again, it's only just a spot mark we're after. Okay, we've drilled these 4 holes, and what I've done now is fix the first side bracket, hold on with a clamp, ready just to put the first rivet in. So we're just going to drill through the first hole through here. Now we set this up in our vise. And now we're ready to put our first rivet in. Okay, just before we put this rivet in, the next thing I just want to do is just put a slight little countersink in here. That just leaves a little bit of room for when I tap the rivet down for it to mushroom down into that tiny little hole there just to hold it on. Grab the rivet, that should just slide through. All you need to do is just trim off the end almost down to them, just leaving a tiny little bit of metal, tiny little bit of the rivet sticking out. Well, with our rivet in place, all I need to do now is just put a little anvil into the vise to support it. When I knock the rivet to give me some support. Tighten that in. The rivet's still held in. like so. And rather than one big massive tap, we'll just give a series of gentle taps just to knock that rivet flat. That's all we need. Okay, with the 4 rivets now all put in position, the last thing I normally like to do, I would normally do on this, I would just run a little seam, just a small seam of soft solder on the plate. A reasonable size lump of brass here, so we'll need slight torch heat on this. Get this up to temperature. There we go. Solder's starting to melt. Only wants just a little seam down just to run in. Perfect. Finally, the last thing to do to complete these angles going onto the main plate is just to mill this down to the same thickness as these white metal castings. So we really need to be this angle face needs to be just the same thickness as this white casting. Okay, here's what I mean now. I've finished milling these down to the right depth here.